Welcome to Bat Lessons, the Batman History Podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Alex. And today we've got something a little bit different for you. We're going to try something out, a short little conversation. Are you familiar with Absolute Batman?
Not at all. It
so
sounds
thrilled.
like some kind of Batman vodka or something.
Okay, so do you know what a line-wide initiative is in comic books?
Line-wide, I mean, I guess my intuition is that it's kind of like the New 52 where they just kind of redo everything at the same time.
So New 52 it was a reboot, and they have like hard reboots and soft reboots all the time. A line-wide initiative doesn't have to be a reboot. It just is when everyone, all the books that they're putting out every month are sort of like trying to match in terms of tone, maybe in terms of art. They have some sort of trade dress that they put at the top. They usually have like an event that kicks it off, an event to wrap it up. They try to basically get everyone on the same page so they're doing the same thing. It's a way to juice sales, right? So the most recent one they had was Dawn of DC, which I read for a bit. This was about when I fell off of new comic books because I moved across the country, which was difficult.
Yeah.
The one that brought me to comics, or DC Comics, was DC Rebirth. A big fan of this event. Jeff Johns was kind of like the guy that oversaw the sort of like direction and wrote the event book, this is the sort of like kickoff one shot that you're seeing here.
You did say one new vocabulary word. You've probably mentioned it before, but I don't think we've talked about it. You said trade dress. What's that?
Oh, that's not a comic specific thing. That's just that's like a legal intellectual property thing. So like the Apple logo would be a trade dress, or like the fact like that certain companies use certain fonts, or they use certain, so like here on DC Rebirth, the DC logo is like the DC logo, but they've also got those sort of like blue curved lines, right? And the font that they use for Rebirth, that is the trade dress for DC Rebirth.
So it's like a trademarked design language.
Yeah,
that is used across.
Yeah, kind of. I don't think they register trademarks for trade dress, but it's basically like this is the stuff that goes with the brand, right?
Sure.
New 52 is. I'm glad you reached for that one. That one was a reboot. That's probably in recent history the one that has done the best sales, right? For DC Comics, I think it's generally agreed upon now that like from a storytelling perspective, this didn't go great. Like the first couple years were fantastic. They brought in a lot of new readers. They were selling the best they've sold in a long time, but it kind of fizzled. And Rebirth was kind of an answer to that. But from a like business perspective, so if you're talking about like executives and decision makers at DC, this is like the gold standard. Like New 52 was, because it was a reboot, it was a clean start, it brought in a lot of people, and just the sales pitch of it all, everything started at number ones. They were able to go like, go on late night television and stuff and like get press from the New York Times and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been a comic book person. And I remember when that happened. It was big enough.
2011.
Yeah.
It was kind of a big deal. Marvel does this too, to a less extent. This was all new to all different. This was about when I started reading. So this is where you get, Sam Wilson, Captain America, right? And Lady Jane Foster, Thor. Now, there's also alternate universes, and these aren't necessarily line-wide initiatives. This is Ultimate Spider-Man, is one we've talked about a lot, right? Marvel created this Ultimate Universe, which was this separate thing. And the idea there is similar, where it's like it's a time for people to jump on. They're trying to make it appealing, trying to make it like a good place for people who have lapsed to come back into the fold, people who've never read before come in, and they're able to have characters unburdened by everything that's happened before, right? Like it's a fresh start, if you will, right? So Ultimate Comics, Ultimate Spider-Man, rebooted universe. DC's done it before. They had Earth One. Earth One was a little bit different because these weren't ongoing comic books. Like normally a comic book comes out once a month, right? And you go to the comic shop and you pick up that book. Earth One was like a set of trade paperbacks. So like J. Michael Straczynski did Superman. There was a Green Lantern. There was I want to say it was, who did Wonder Woman? It was Grant Morrison, I think. Anyway, they got big names. They put them on big characters, and they said, it's a totally different universe. It's a reboot, right? That was the idea, is like, you don't have to know anything. It can be different. They can challenge sort of like fundamental parts of it. This also kind of fizzled, I think, because it was monthly, right? Or no, sorry, it wasn't monthly. It was trades, and they came out whenever they did, and it took years, and like they didn't really connect with each other. So at Comic-Con, which was like 2 weeks ago, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, something like that, they announced a new line-wide initiative at DC called All In. And the people at the helm of this are Scott Snyder, who wrote Batman in the New 52, and Joshua Williamson, who has kind of been one of the sort of creative directors inside of DC for the last few years. And the idea is that this is an opportunity for them to sort of like reset the tone and focus back in and have some, events that like set the sort of initiative for the line. The way they talk about it's super wishy-washy. It's like, oh yeah, we're all in on story. We're all in on characters. It's like everyone's all in. We're all rowing in the same direction at the same time. It's like, with Rebirth, it was, we're going back to the roots of the characters. We're going back to the sort of core of like what makes you the nostalgia to some degree, but also the sort of like fundamental truths of the characters. Right. And that was like a salve after like 6 years or 8 years of New 52, where people felt like they couldn't recognize the characters anymore. Right. So that was very much an answer to the moment. All In is I think an answer to the moment insofar as like DC's been having like really bad sales, right? They've been struggling to remain relevant compared to Marvel. But on in this graphic, you can see on the right-hand side, you've got the main universe. So all of the books that are happening right now, most of them are continuing. A lot of them are with the same creative teams or whatever. They're going to renumber at number 1, and that's all happening on the right-hand side. Justice League's coming back. Justice League hasn't been a thing for like, I don't know, 2 years now, 3 years, something like that. So they're going to come back as part of...
It's actually kind of interesting because they're still coming out with like Justice League movies and stuff.
Oh, sure. But like, it's a very much a comic book thing to like take a character off the table or to take a team off the table to like make you miss them, right? Yeah. It's not like we don't like the Justice League. It's like, and it's a sandbox for people to play in. Writers and artists can be like, what's the DC universe without Justice League like, right? What if we let the Titans like shine for a while? Like that sort of thing. And then on the left-hand side here, we have what they're calling the Absolute Universe. So this is kind of like Earth 1, kind of like Ultimate Marvel, but it's monthly, right? So they're doing ongoing books in a totally different universe. Presumably they're going to cross over at some point, right? I think that's kind of implied because you've got Darkseid kind of like pointing out in both directions. Yeah. And like, we know that All In's going to start with a couple different books. Like there's one going on right now, an event called Absolute Power that sort of like ties in somehow. And then there's like a one shot coming in October. I forget what it's called. It's like All In number 1 or something like that. And it's supposed to introduce both. It's a flip book. So like if you read it left to right, like the one set of pages is going to be one story, and then you flip the book over. So it's like the opposite page is upside down.
That's cool.
And so like, I think that's going to be one side's going to be main universe. The other side's going to be Absolute Universe.
Absolute. That's pretty smart. That's fun. That's
really it's fun. Pretty cool. Try to get people in the door. And that's happening in October, right? They're kicking all this stuff off. Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about the creators that are behind Absolute Batman in particular. So they've been teasing it for a little bit, and there were some leaks before Comic-Con. And Batman is really what they're pushing. That's going to be the first book. That's going to be the one that's going to try to kick off the Absolute Universe.
Awesome.
And the artist is a guy named Nick Dragotta, who has been in the industry for a while. He kind of does journeyman work for DC Marvel, meaning like he'll pick up an issue here, he'll pick up an issue there, do pick up pages as necessary. He's been very involved. Like if you go to his credits, there's like tons of books that he's done, tons of big books from, all the characters that you could think of. In terms of like where he's really made his mark, there's an independent book on Image Comics called East of West, where he's drawing for Jonathan Hickman. And Hickman is an interesting writer. He's doing Ultimate Spider-Man right now at Marvel. In the past, he kind of did the X-Men reboot, but he's kind of like very intricate, analytical. Like he's known for doing text dump pages. Like he'll have expose, like just like text, like tons of them throughout his books. And then the writer for Absolute Batman is going to be Scott Snyder. Okay. And that's a big deal because Scott Snyder is the only other person to have done like a Batman number 1 besides Bob Kane, Bill Finger, and Tom King. So he was the writer for New 52 for Batman.
I didn't know that was such a elite crew.
Yes. Before 2011, they had never renumbered Batman, ever. So 2011, they renumbered it for New 52, and then they renumbered it number 1 for Rebirth with Tom King. So he did Court of Owls, if you're familiar with that. He did a big arc called The Dark Mirror. before that kind of like proved that, you know, he was worthy of taking over the Batman book. And he's done things since. Like, have you ever heard of the Batman Who Laughs?
Yeah. Is that the one that's like got the big thing across the eyes? And
I don't even know. Yeah, it's like kind of a mashup between Batman and Joker.
Yeah. That one.
Yeah. I think it's a little cringe. I think it's, but like I get why people are into it, you know. So he's got really high highs for me. Like I think Court of Owls is really great, and so like you definitely get the sense that they're pulling out the big guns. So I think Jason Aaron is doing one of the new ones. I think he's a big time writer. He wrote all the Thor stuff that ended up getting adapted into the movies. I think he's doing Wonder Woman. It might be Superman, not important. But
like the Wonder Woman movie or like the
the
comics?
Absolute Wonder Woman book.
Okay. Just making sure I'm keeping up.
So yeah, it's a big deal. They're really pushing hard.
Sorry, one quick question. In terms of like the movie stuff,
yeah,
we've talked about this before, but just a refresher.
Yeah,
Zack Snyder, Scott Snyder. Is there any
two
connection?
different people? No connection.
I know it's two different people. No connection.
They
just
share a name,
sure.
but otherwise unrelated. Yeah.
Cool. I can imagine people wondering.
So, do you know what an Ashcan is?
Nope.
So an Ashcan is basically, the idea is that it's a teaser, right? So this is a comic book that has a snippet of a story. Okay. It's an ad, basically. They gave these out at San Diego Comic-Con, and I was able to get my hands on a copy. I apologize, like we're going to look at pictures because it's not on DC Universe Infinite, and so hopefully we don't get like copyright striked or whatever. But this is a preview of Absolute Batman. This is your first look at Absolute Batman. What do you think?
Very cool. I mean, you had that picture up the left and the right side too, and I was checking out Batman there. Yeah. There's it's beefier, which I dig. Yeah. It's got that big like squared out Batman logo.
Yes.
Which is more similar to like the Ben Affleck Batman. Like his is very squared out too, right? I think that's a pretty cool design. It's stylized. It doesn't read as well from a distance, so I don't know how like realistic that would be.
Sure. This is also like a foil cover, so it's maybe not the best example of it, but
no, I just think that about that design in general, that the one they've used before, when it's squared out, like the scalloping is there, but like from a distance,
it doesn't look like a bat. Yeah.
It doesn't look like a bat. Yeah. So
totally.
But no, it looks super cool. I dig it. I think that was one of the things I really liked about, was it Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns? Was how he was really beefy. He wasn't like this super lean gymnast anymore. He was kind of a tank. Yeah. So that, I like what I'm seeing. This looks really interesting.
So inside the Ashcan, we have just a few pages of story, but it's got no words yet, no narration, no text boxes. It is only black and white, so there's no colors.
It's also almost, what do you call that? It's not vertically symmetrical, horizontally symmetrical.
What, the bat logo?
Yeah, I mean, it's the only difference is like the ear and the tail.
Yeah, totally.
It's hard to see here, but it's actually really easy to see on the slide you just had.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, that's interesting. Because like I was looking at the Michael Keaton Batman logo and how it has scallops on the bottom, but it doesn't have any scallops on the top.
Well, so you know that it changed, right? So not to have too much of an aside, but the Batman logo that they used for the movie, like on the posters, is different than the one that was on his costume.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, so in Batman '89, in the movie, he has a much different bat on his emblem than they used in all the marketing stuff.
Oh yeah, okay. I guess I did know that.
Yeah. They fixed it.
Now that I'm
Batman
looking
Returns.
at it, it's like, oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. So we open up here, and there's a sniper on top of a building looking down at what looks like maybe a bank or something like that, or a courthouse. You've got kind of the Roman pillars, and there's these dudes in skull masks with machine guns, and they're shooting up into the sky at Batman. He's coming down with the cape around him, and it looks like his cape is bulletproof. Ping, ping, pong, pong, rat-a-tat-tat. And we've got our first like big splash of Batman.
Well, my first thought was he's got a bulletproof cape. That's not always consistent. So that's interesting detail. It's kind of like the fireproof cape that you see in Batman Forever and stuff like that. So that's interesting for sure. So he's gonna have technology, which is good. I like the art style a lot.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, once this comes out, I'm probably going to buy this just so I can flip through it. And
I think we should cover it on the show, but
oh, for sure.
If you're willing to.
Yeah. Well, like you were just talking about the one that's going to flip. I don't remember what you called that.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like that's a novelty enough that I would like to have that in my hands.
Yeah.
I'll probably own that one. So I mean, I really like this style for sure. It's not too detailed and it's not lacking in detail. It's like good mid-fi.
Yeah. I don't know if you can tell what's happening in the upper right hand there, but he's got basically the edge of his cape has a big hook on the end of it. And so what he's done is he's like wrapped his hand around the cape and he's hooked it around the back of this guy's neck and he's chucking him across the street into a window.
So that reminds me of like the thumbs on a bat.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a pretty cool detail.
Yeah.
To have the hook. So it chucks him across the street through a window.
Yeah.
Yep. I can see that.
And then he grabs another dude by like the bottom of his skull mask and chucks him into a light pole. So like very brutal.
Yeah.
Violent Batman.
Yeah. That's going to be a big question is, does this Batman kill?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I wonder if I can make it. Let me see if I can make this full screen. I did successfully make this full screen, but then it made the audio cut out for the recording. We just briefly talked about his wings that have the opposable thumb hooks also go rigid, and he's able to use them kind of like legs, and he jumps up on top of them and kicks two dudes with skulls in the face, which is kind of intense. And we also have a mysterious figure with a sniper rifle from a nearby roof looking down at Batman and the people in the skull costumes running up the steps of Batman. It's just a really cool large panel shot. And he's able to remove his ears, the bat ears, and their batarangs, and is able to impale some of the goons. He goes back and retrieves them, and there's blood. It's kind of intense. Puts them back in his ears. And like out come the, I don't know even what you call those, like sharp implements up his forearms.
Yeah, there is a word for those.
Yeah, gauntlets, I guess. I don't know. But he deploys them and he starts roughing up dudes. And worth noting that this is pretty violent. Like there's blood flowing as he's like punching people, as he's pulling these batarangs out of the goons, right? That's not typical for a mainline comic book, right? Like it is for, like DC did this thing for a while called Black Label, where, you know, one-off books were like mature, like R-rated, but most of the mainline stuff that's coming out every month is like kind of PG-13.
That's like the Lee Bermejo stuff, right?
Yeah, he did some of those like Black Label books that were a little more mature.
I'm just thinking back to when we talked about it last. I think it was in the Lee Bermejo, the Batman Noel episode.
And he did Joker and all those too. So yeah, there's this large brute standing at the bottom of the stairs, and Batman's kind of halfway down, just bodies strewn about where he's beat like countless numbers of these goons. And you get the sense that, you know, this is the heavy. I think it's just supposed to be a big guy, like a mini boss. And that's the end of the Ashcan. So those are the preview pages.
You said we're going to find out who that is in a second. Oh,
no,
because more stuff has come out.
We're going to find out who the sniper is.
Yeah, that's what I meant. The sniper.
Yes, we will. I've got more slides.
It's outside of the Ashcan. Okay, all right. Do you know why it's called an Ashcan?
I don't. I have no idea. But I know that it goes way back. Like people had Ashcans as like, you would give them out if you were going to a con to like try to get signed to, you know, a big comic company or. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. It seems like a pilot a little bit, like a teaser pilot.
100%. Yeah.
And then, the other thing that I just caught myself falling into this little trap, but when Allie and I were watching the Batman Cape Crusader show, that was one thing that we talked about is like, whenever they do this type of stuff, the audience, like us, fall into this trap of like, is that going to be this person? Is that going to be that person?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because we're not thinking like it's going to be a brand new person. It's going to be someone we've seen before.
Totally.
So I was just thinking, oh, it's probably not Bane, but like it could be someone completely brand new that has never existed in the universe before.
I have no idea. So the Ashcan does keep going, but the story pages don't. So we've got a bunch of concept art here. Quote from Scott Snyder. Nick's art is perfect fit. It's grounded and gritty, but also dynamic and fresh. A bit dangerous and new to superhero readers just like this Batman.
Interesting. Wonder what that thing in the back of his neck is. That's
we don't know. It looks like it's kind of like augmenting him somehow.
Yeah.
This was a slide that they showed at Comic-Con during the panel. And it shows that he's real tall, 7 foot tall when he's, you know, bottom of his feet to the top of his ears when he's in his costume. Our Bat isn't new in form, he's new in function, it says.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guessing there's a lot of technology there, but it does. So that little humanoid that's 6 feet tall on the left, it's like, is that showing us like that's a normal sized person?
Yeah,
or
that's
is
an
that
example.
like
well, it's an example of a 6 foot tall person. You think a 6 foot tall person's kind of tall, you know?
Yeah.
They're looking up to Batman.
Yeah. So it makes me wonder, like, is Bruce Wayne like crazy tall too, or is there something going on?
Yeah, we'll see here in a second.
Okay.
They say hand wraps protect knuckles and wrists. Always black with gloves over top. Some more concept art here. We see him, you know, pulling the batarangs out and posing with them.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love this. Like, he's got like a gigantic weapon of some kind. I said I thought it looked kind of like a paladin hammer, and Brian said he thought maybe it looked kind of like an axe. But regardless, it kind of mirrors the sort of bat logo that he has on his chest, and we can see in this sketch, it's got like hashes across it, like maybe it's thicker or more of a piece of armor.
That part was like thicker. It was like iron or something.
I don't think the movie was the first one to do that. It's been done several times before.
Probably not. I'm just thinking about like recent examples that have done something similar.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. And then here we've got pictures of Bruce. He's young. He's in his 20s. I don't know if you can read that, but it says he's 6'6", 250 pounds, and he's thick with 2 exclamation points and boy. So everyone's on the internet is saying he's a thick boy. He's a city engineer. He's wearing overalls and a hard hat. That's his occupation. And we get the bat ear Frenchie is casting a shadow, and you can see the little cowl. And here's another quote from Scott Snyder. He says, "It took shape when I realized it wasn't a hook or premise. Batman loses money. It's not that. It was a complete rethinking of every aspect. If Batman comes up with nothing, who would his parents be? His villains be? What would Gotham be? All of it. It's a top to bottom rethinking." I hate that this is Twitter, but this is where he was saying it. He says, that was one of the moments that I love thinking on this. If he's not wealthy or famous, he doesn't have to walk a line as Bruce. He doesn't have to wear tuxes, hide the physique to pretend. He can be huge because Bruce Wayne is no one. So look out.
It's good.
Yeah, it doesn't have that sort of like duality.
Well, another good thing about him being a nobody is if he ever loses mask, he's not very recognizable. His face is not on billboards. He's not a famous person. Sure. He's just like a dude.
Yeah. Here we get a look at our mysterious character. He looks kind of like Ra's al Ghul, honestly, but he's in sort of a military getup. And we have another Scott Snyder quote. He says, "I can't say enough good things about Nick as a partner and a friend. He lives close by, and so we're getting to make the book together in my studio. Whiteboard sketches like our own bullpen. I've never gotten to work this way before, and it's thrilling."
The motorcycle being really futuristic like that does make me wonder if this will be a bit more like Batman Beyond technology, because a lot of Batman stuff, especially like the animated comics, seem to take place in like the 30s. Sure. With some like better technology. So this being like super futuristic also seems like a new take, not a brand new take, but like a less tread path.
I think they're taking a different angle for sure. So then on the slides at Comic-Con, we get to figure out who this is. This is Alfred.
That's Alfred. Yeah. That's pretty sweet. That's a surprise. I was expecting it to be... I was a little bit confused because it kind of...
Brian said that he wasn't sure if when he was sniping, he was looking for Batman or the goons or both. What his role as like an observer or actor was in that situation. His code name is Penny. He's with MI6. He's a spy.
MI6.
Yeah.
That's pretty legit.
Yeah. Grizzled, worn out, tired, old guard of the Empire.
So this also kind of makes me wonder if like there's ever going to be a Robin character, because he already has this kind of sidekick where they went old instead of young. So that's also pretty interesting.
And then we have another slide of our first villain, Black Mask.
Black Mask. That's cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. Really interesting art because it's like the bottom of the helmet is like a skull, and the top is like almost like a black crystal ball, but it's like bulbous. It's bigger than like your head.
Yeah, it reads kind of like a motorcycle helmet almost on top.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Pretty.
And
cool.
then we've got some more concept art. Scott Snyder says on Gotham, it's like NYC now with taller, prettier buildings above the old gargoyles, owned by people who never show up. Shinier, colder, a more epic stage. So we're leaving some
Pretty
of that,
cool.
like you said, 30s, 40s Gothic stuff behind.
Yeah.
This has all been Nick Dragotta so far, but this is Jim Lee, his take on New Absolute Batman. I wouldn't expect this to show up anywhere. It's just a sketch.
Is that a chain in his hand, or is that like a spine?
I don't know what it is. I think that's supposed to be the cape. We're seeing like a hardened edge of it. Yeah.
I guess I can see it now. That's kind of interesting. It also kind of looks like what's that stuff you put on Christmas trees? Is popcorn?
Oh, sure.
Garland.
Yeah,
looks like garland.
It does almost a little bit. I think it looks like bones. I think it's meant to look like bones.
Yeah, that was my first read. Is it looks like a stretched out spine or something?
Totally. I think this is just Jim Lee having fun, so I wouldn't expect this particular take to show up.
Oh yeah, it looks different. This is concept art for sure.
Yeah, this is a cover for Absolute Batman #2.
Already been solicited with just excellent art from Daniel Warren Johnson. He's one of my favorites, and he's on top of a rooftop, just surrounded by bodies, looking at the camera.
That definitely makes me wonder. Like, has he come across a bunch of dead bodies, or did he create a bunch of dead bodies?
I'm assuming he created the dead bodies. So they've got the skull masks on. So
yeah, interesting.
So what do you think? Do you want to try? You've never read a comic book month to month, right?
Mm-mm.
Would you want to once a month do a new Absolute Batman? See what it's like. Try it out for a while.
Once a month, sure.
Yeah. Well, that's how often it's going to come out, and I figured we could cover it on the show.
I'm just thinking, like, I am about to have another child, and things are going to get pretty busy.
Sure.
So, but once a month, I think I can do that.
I'm not asking you to commit, but it's only 22 pages. And modern comic books are much more breezy than the Golden Age stuff. So.
Oh, sure. No, but I dig the idea. This is fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any other final thoughts you want before I?
Noise. Final thoughts. Not really. Just really curious. Definitely. I mean, the teaser stuff is working. It's definitely piqued my interest. I want to see what they're going to do.
Yeah.
I have not seen very many like beefy Batmans.
Yeah.
So, or I don't know if that's Batman, whatever. But
sure.
Yeah, very, very curious. Also, I really dig the idea of like a fresher take to say he doesn't have the same origin.
Yeah.
I'll be really curious to see like what happened to his parents, because it's not going to be like rich family walking down an alley. It's going to be probably something more tragic.
Yeah.
It would be really wild if like one or both of his parents are alive. But like if they're really trying to do fresh takes and have different characters than we've seen before, then there's rife for opportunity. I'm very curious.
Yeah, totally. I think that's what makes it really interesting is like, what's his motivation? How does he decide to be Batman? Because they're changing everything else other than like his name. So it'd be cool. And we don't get these cool like jumping on points very often where they're sort of starting from scratch, starting fresh. So I haven't been buying monthly comic books in over a year, and so this is gonna probably suck me back in. I'm gonna try it out at least.
I'm curious, like, is this something you just like sign up for and they show up in your mailbox, or do you have to like go to a comic book store every month?
The mechanics of doing comics. If you physically want them, basically the way to do it is through a comic book store. You can mail order them, but generally speaking, and it can be cheaper that way. But generally speaking, you won't get them on time. Like you're not going to get them on the day they come out or the week they come out. Okay. So if you want it on time, you want it day and date, you got to go to physically the comic book store, or you do it digitally.
Okay. I'll probably go find a comic book store nearby and
you can
see what I can do.
You can ask them either for a subscription, but most of the time they call it a pull list. So you can say, "Hey, I'd like to get this monthly," and they'll hold it for you. They'll put your name down, and then you walk in, and every month they'll go find your copy of that book that they've set aside. Final order cutoffs for this are September 15th, I think. So you have to tell them before September 15th that you want, because it comes out on October 5th, I think. So you got to tell them you want the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put it on my to-do list.
Hey, Bat Family, if you made it this far, I know you liked the episode, so do yourself a favor, subscribe, you won't miss any more videos, give it a like, leave a comment down below, tell us what we got wrong, and to keep the Batman history train going, watch this video next.